You're listening to the Rewrite the Rules podcast. We are your hosts. My name is Harriet.
I'm Beth.
And I'm Natalie.
You want to work towards achieving true food and body image freedom, you are in the right place.
Rewrite the Rules podcast is your survival guide to letting go of harmful societal expectations and unlearning any unhelpful beliefs that are stopping you from having a healthy and loving relationship with food and yourself.
Our mission is to help you feel heard, understood, and empower you to step out of the box and rewrite your rules so you can live life on your terms. Thank you for tuning in. Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Rewrite the Rules.
Yes, welcome back to another episode. This episode, we decided that we wanted to talk upon and give you an insight into our journeys of recovery and why we decided to embark on them, and also what we gained from our journeys.
Yes, so in this episode, we just really want to give you listeners some help, advice and guidance on how to start embarking on the journey that is food and body freedom. And we just really hope it will leave you feeling inspired and motivated to start to explore and let go of any restrictive dieting that is most likely holding you back from fully experiencing a freer way of living and ultimately a way of living that could provide you with more inner happiness.
Again, a disclaimer, we have to give a trigger warning as we will be touching on subjects such as calories, diets, etc. So if you feel like this may impact you in a negative way, feel free to skip. It's totally okay. We won't be upset. Obviously, go and listen to the rest of our episodes. But as always, our mission is to help anyone struggling out there to live a life free from restriction and negative body image thoughts.
I'm so excited to talk about this episode, just because I think, Natalie, you always say this, like your why on why you wanted to recover is like always, it's just like one of the most important steps. So I think talking about this will be so helpful.
Definitely. I think it actually wasn't me. It wasn't me that realised that my why was important. It's actually my boyfriend that made me realise that my why was the most important thing. And then that's when I was like, I'm going to start going on about this now, because it is, I think, to have a why is always something in which you can like anchor back to when it gets really difficult, and it makes you feel like, no, I don't want to give up, because I'm creating, I'm doing it for a certain reason, whether it be something that you want to achieve in the future. So yeah, I mean, if I start by talking about what maybe my why was, or why I decided to recover, and then we can all talk about it. So I decided to recover because I really found that restriction and binge eating was like the main ruler of every experience in my life. And it just had a hugely negative impact on my enjoyment, everything to do with my happiness. Holidays, jobs, friendships, family, relationships, I really felt like came to a complete and utter standstill. I felt to the point of like things that I was no longer saying yes to going out to meals with friends. I really wasn't like, even like the thought of sitting and having dinner with family at like, someone's house. All I wanted to do was go home and either go home and eat or not want to be there, because I didn't want to be around the food. And yeah, I felt like it was just there. It was on my shoulder all the time. And to me, it was just, I got to a point where I was like, this is enough. I think it had been going on for maybe about 4 years, binging, then restricting. I just thought, and I remember listening to a podcast actually, and she explained that she asked her nan if she wanted to go away on holiday, and her nan she couldn't walk very well, and her nan had always talked about she loved Spain. They'd gone on holidays when they were younger, and she really, really wanted to feel weightless in the water because she's got a lot of problems walking and just aches and pains. So she was like, Nan, I'll pay for you to go on holiday, we'll go to Spain. And her nan said no. And she was like, well, why not? You've been talking about it for ages. And she said, because I can't stand the thought of anybody looking at me when I get undressed and seeing me in a swimming costume and seeing my fat arms and my fat legs. And she was like late 80s. And when you think, oh my God, I think we tend to think as we grow older, those things that, those body hang-ups, they melt away. But they don't if you don't do the work on them. And I thought, I don't want to be that old lady that's still not enjoying her life. And also, I want a family, and I don't want my children to take on, how I feel about my body and turn that into how they feel about theirs. I really want to create an environment in which they're just happy being them. So yeah, that was my why.
Oh my gosh, I'm like a bit teary listening to that.
Honestly, when I listened to that podcast, I got teary because it is hearing her talk about her nan and just being like, that could be me. And I just think it's awful to think that, you know, you're going through your life and you're still living your later years with it just holding you back.
Yeah, and it just, listening to you talk about that made me just realize and think about how like diet culture and a big part of societal values kind of make you fear aging and changing, and it's just a lose-lose situation because we will age, we will change, and I can't even imagine how difficult it would be to be, you know, 80 years old and literally having like 70 years of your life wanting to change your body and wanting to fight your body. It's 70 years of thinking a certain way. It's
Awful.
So, like,
awful.
70 years of like looking back, because I don't know about any of you guys, but especially when I was like in the height of like disordered eating, I was constantly looking back on the previous body that I had a couple of months before, a couple of years before, thinking I just wish I appreciated that skin that I was in. And I was like, I don't want to be 80 years old looking back at when I was 50 wishing the same thing. But also I love that you mentioned, Natalie, about having a family, because that is something I'm very conscious of. If I do have sons or daughters, I don't want to bring them up in a negative environment like that. So I am so conscious about like recovering myself so that I can be like a better influence on like the next generation.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh.
But yeah, Harriet, what was your why?
So I find my like recovery experience it really hard to like deconstruct, because the way I explain it is in like two parts. I have the first part, which I would say was when I was struggling with an eating disorder, like a actual like capital E, capital D eating disorder. And that was when I was, you know, 15, 16, 17. And in terms of how I recovered from that, I didn't seek any professional help. It simply was I couldn't sustain it anymore. If I'm being completely honest, I think at the time I wish I could sustain it. I wish I could have kept what I was doing up, but I just couldn't. And for me, a really big turning point at that time, so part one, was I went traveling. I took a gap year after school. This is when I realized I couldn't keep my habits up. And my first traveling trip, which was the first trip that I went on by myself when I was 18, I felt very little. I went to Australia, and I worked on this conservation project in like the outback of Australia, and we worked on an island called Kangaroo Island, if anyone's been there, but it's just it's just like off of South Australia. And it was basically, we worked on this conservation project, and we stayed in this house full of these other volunteers as well. And I was like sharing a room with someone. There was no way that I could binge on food. Like no way I could restrict. I wasn't able to choose what I had to eat. It was really hard to buy food. So it basically just showed me like this is impossible. So I'm kind of forced to like give up and just be quote unquote normal. And after Australia, I went to Sri Lanka, and I was fortunate enough to go on a mental health placement. So I was a mental health volunteer in Sri Lanka. And when I was there, and Sri Lanka is a developing country, and we worked on all sorts of projects, but we went to like men's mental health homes. We worked at mental health institutions. We worked at orphanages. And when you see just how little some people have to eat, again, it's like, there's no way I can keep up what I was doing. And that's not to evoke guilt in anyone, but it's just a perspective change. I remember as soon as I learned to drive, I was, driving to like all these fast food places and like buying so much food that you can possibly imagine and spending so much money and just like wasting it. And going to Sri Lanka just made me realize like that's just not on. I can't do that anymore. And so it was just a perspective shifter for me. Again, one that I didn't ask for, but one that I'm so glad I had. And yeah, and then I did, after, just to finish off my travel series, I went to America for 3 months because I worked at Camp America. I don't know if anyone's heard of that. But
yes, I always wanted to do Camp America, always.
yeah, so I worked as a camp counselor. I was in a state called Idaho, and that's like a really random state in America. No offense to anyone from Idaho, but it is. Every time I tell an American that I was in Idaho for like 2 to 3 months, they're like, that's so random. But again, we were in like the middle of the mountains, and I couldn't just like pop to the shop. I didn't have a car, I couldn't drive or anything like that. So yeah, so that was like the reason why I'm bringing this up, because that was just a huge part of that recovery. But I guess my why there was just, I can't keep up what I was doing, and I want to enjoy my life now, and I want to appreciate it. And I have a different, that year completely changed my life in terms of it changed my mindset and my perspective on things. So that was part one. Part two was, I would say, following like that year, I was just very much into diet culture, always dieting. But I don't know if anyone recalls me talking about this on the first episode. I thought that was normal. So I didn't think there was anything wrong with me. I didn't think I had disordered eating. I just thought, everyone hates their body. Everyone wants to lose weight. Everyone goes on a diet. It wasn't until a couple of years ago, we're about to go on holiday, and my boyfriend asked me, are you going to go on a diet? And randomly, just in that moment, I just decided, no, can't be bothered. And even at the time, I didn't make that decision because I wanted to quote unquote recover. I made that decision because I think I was just exhausted, and I just thought, I know I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to put my body, my mind through that anymore. And then it was when I gone on a holiday, and I think it's the first holiday that I didn't want to binge. It was the first holiday I felt like I had so much peace and freedom with food. That just gave me this spark to continue. And that's when I decided to research diet culture, and also like professionally, I wanted to work in the field. So I did a lot of trainings, I read a lot, I did a lot of research. And yeah, I guess I just decided that I felt like I'd been lied to my whole life. And it just like shone a light on how badly I was treating my body. And that my why then was, no, I want to actually accept myself. I actually want to like myself and, love myself some days as well, like properly, and like show myself that compassion, and I guess get on the same side of my body. So yeah, it was, for me, just to kind of wrap that point up, I think my why for the part two of my journey was empowerment. I just want to feel empowered again and take back control and accept myself.
Yes, I love listening to that. Like, literally loved it. It just felt like really like that sudden moment of realization. And
Awakening.
Also as well, and also, like, I think, not saying that this is a reason as to why, but I feel really similar in the sense of, like, I was really wanting, because it sounds like for you, because we both traveled, I was really wanting to live this life of like exploring and doing all of these different things. And this, what I was suffering with, restriction, binge eating, all of these issues I had with how I felt about myself, was completely the opposite. It was like, this is like, it's like almost a magnet, and it's like it's pushing, it doesn't work. So if I want to really live this life of like all of these things that I love and traveling, then I have to tackle what is going on and have to recover. And I think you explaining that then, Harriet, was so nice.
I think when you mentioned like about your holiday, and you were like, no, actually I don't want to do this, it was like you were aware that you knew what trying to diet for a holiday entailed. Like, that would take so much energy, so much effort, so much hatred and obsession like over your body. So the fact that you were actually like, no, we're not going to do this, must have felt like so uncomfortable and scary at the time, but I bet you're so glad for it now.
Yeah, it felt like, I'm just trying to like put myself back in that position. I think I honestly didn't really think anything of it. I just thought, oh, if I'm being honest, I think what was going in my head was, I guess I'll just be fat for this holiday, and whatever, I'll just be fat for that holiday, and I don't care. It came from a very helpless stance, just whatever. And the most amazing thing about it was that I went from helpless to empowered very quickly, because the minute I remember it again, the click for me on holiday was like, wow, I feel in control.
I was literally about to say that, in control.
Yeah.
Whereas people think that in doing that you're letting go of control, but no, you're gaining control over letting other influences impact how you feel about yourself.
Yeah. And I know I say this all the time, but this is why I'm so passionate about trying to change people's mindset on letting themselves go versus like connecting back to themselves. Because when I was on a diet and going through disordered eating, I was letting go of myself then, because I wasn't listening to my values, what I wanted, my needs. But then as soon as I stopped dieting, that's when I started to listen to myself again. So that's when I started to connect back to myself. And I think people think it's the other way around. Oh no, when I'm on a diet, that's when I keep myself in check. That's when I can keep that control. But actually, are you? And that's the question that I think people just need to ask themselves. Like, how much in control are you?
Some people can feel in control of their mind, but especially when you're binging and restricting, you're not in control of your body. Like, how could, letting your body go from one extreme to the other? Like, I'd go from looking undernourished and sort of like flat and the nothing to me, to severely bloated, and there was no in between. How is that having control, and how is that finding like peace and calm? It isn't. And I think that's why it was so empowering, when I was just like, no, I'm not going to do it anymore. And yeah, I shared some of the same thoughts of thinking, well, I'm just going to let myself like be chunky, and then that's it. But actually, the second I got in a bikini, I was more confident than I've ever been in like the past 8 years of going on holidays. So yeah, I really love that, Harriet.
I'm pleased. And Beth, tell us, what was your why on your recovery?
So I feel like I've got more than one, but I wanted to recover because I just felt like I didn't have any quality of life anymore. And like I was just binge eating to the point where I felt like I no longer just had any control. Because in my mind, I was like, right, if I can restrict all week and then binge on a weekend and just keep it to that little routine, I am in control and I've got this down. But obviously, like reflecting now, absolutely wasn't. But like anything I enjoyed, from holidays to the gym, were all constantly tainted by being completely obsessed with food. And it literally just impacted every aspect of my life, from like my relationship with my partner to outings with friends. And obviously I can see a lot of like the red flags now that I stand back and like look at my previous behavior compared to like how I am now. But even at the time, I was just like, I don't want to feel trapped in this. And I was just like, I'm so sick of having to start again on a Monday. I was just like, I'm sick of this. Like I am almost like aggressively, I was just like, I'm so done. I don't know what I want to do, but I don't want to do this anymore. So it was obviously like draining mentally, but I found it more like difficult to struggle with like the physical implications. So like my body constantly going from one extreme to the other, being like so bloated that I was like physically in pain, like digestion all over the place, and like just swelling, like my ankles would like double in size. And I was just like, I'm sick of putting my body through this every day, because I was like, this is uncomfortable, this is painful. Obviously it was hard mentally, but like I think the physical implications were what I was the most sick of. Because like you said, Harriet, when you think dieting is the norm, and things like cheat days were very much the norm, and like 10,000 calorie challenges were very much the norm. So in my head, I was just like, this is how everyone thinks. Like, this is, having these thoughts are completely normal. It's just my body that is the problem. For me, especially sort of putting a lot of my life on Instagram for many years, I sort of felt like a fraud for constantly trying to cover this side of me up. Like, yeah, I'd be like, oh, I had a cheat day today, or I overindulged on the weekend, but I was never fully honest. And it was just really going against my values, because that's what I vowed to be, like completely transparent. But also spontaneity is something that I value so much, and I had no spontaneity in my life. My boyfriend couldn't be like, oh, do you want to go out for a meal today? Like, he couldn't say things like that, because I'm like, no, it needs to be planned. I need to look at the menu beforehand. I need to have a week's notice or a couple of days notice. I'd get angry if like family wanted to go out for a spontaneous meal. Even just like things going to the cinema, just like off the cuff, would be stressful and horrible. And I just couldn't enjoy any sort of spontaneity. And I was just like, I'm sick of having every second of my life planned out. Like, I love being organised, but I was just like, there's no excitement. I'm fed up of not being able to do like spontaneous romantic things with my partner, because it's just like too much stress for me to handle, and we won't have a good time in the end. So yeah, that's sort of like my sort of big why as to why I was just like, I'm so sick of this. And I couldn't put my finger on like what avenue I'd go down, and I could never have envisioned having the sort of food freedom and exercising like body image freedom that I've got today. But I knew that I wanted something different and I wanted to change. So yeah, that's
I love that, Beth. And I think so many people are in that position of, I guess, that middle position of being like, okay, I know this isn't working for me. I don't like this, but I don't know what's next. I don't know what to do. I don't know I don't know how to get food freedom. I don't even know what food freedom is, what that means. So yeah, I just hope people will find this helpful, like actually hopefully having some inspiration on why they want to recover and like what that next step can look like.
Beth, I love listening to your why them, and I think when you feel like it's such a deciding factor on everything that you're wanting to do, you know, like you saying that, you know, so connect with somebody telling you, like your partner saying let's go out, and it's like, no, it's everything was, all food had to be earned. Like there's no way that I'm allowed to go to the cinema and have sweets, because I haven't done that work to be able to actually have this. And I just think it's just mad. It's absolutely mad when you think about it. And the food freedom that we have now, like when you're saying that you never thought you would get there, and you know where we are now, like even for myself, like there are certain times that I would go away, like for me, for instance, I had a hen do this weekend. If I had a hen do previous me, I would feel like I have to look the best version of me. Like I have to have dieted or done like loads of physical exercise before. There was always a workout done that morning of. And I just woke up that day and I just thought, there's no way I'm doing a workout, because I'm absolutely shattered for one. I've got to get my bags packed. That's the most important thing. And I remember putting on a pair of jeans when I was there, and I was like, God, these are a bit tight. And that was it. I just moved on. Whereas that for me before would have ruined the whole experience. All I would be thinking is, I feel like I've put on weight. But you know, it does take a long time to put that work in to get there, but what you gain is so worth it.
It's so true that the things that would have triggered us, you know, before, now can just be like, oh yeah, feel a bit tight, but it's not the most important thing. It's just the way it is, like whatever.
I feel like I gained so much time. Like I used to sit there like adding all my food onto my fitness pal like the night before. So I've saved that time now. Like I used to go to the gym more than once a day just for funsies. I've saved that time now. And I'm literally like, I don't know how I used to fit it all in. Like and essentially like looking back, every bit of my free time was spent trying to exercise. And I think you mentioned in your hen do, I'm gonna go because I was just like, I don't want to have to work this off. Like, I don't want to add another couple of workouts to my plate this week. Like, I've barely got time for it anyway. I just don't want the added stress and struggle, because I just thought I had to work everything off. I was like, if I'm having an extra social occasion this week, you bet I've got to go to the gym a couple more times. You bet I've got to take a couple of snacks off like my daily foods and stuff. I think that's what it was. It was like constantly just being exhausted physically and mentally.
It takes up so much time, and yeah, I'm just so grateful that I have my time back.
Because like I definitely used to feel like I had 1,000 thoughts running through my mind at any one time, and I just look at my partner and he's so chill, and I just like, is there anything going on in that brain of yours? Like, are you not thinking anything right now? And he's like, no. And now I sort of understand that calm a little bit more like, it's just like a wave of chill came over me the second I was just like, right, we're just going to eat what we want when we want, and that's it. That physical stress is manifesting into mental stress as well. So I was just like always on the go and always stressed about something, and now I can just sit down and be calm, and it's wonderful.
It's so funny because I think all our boyfriends are quite calm, aren't they?
Yeah.
Dating the same man.
Yeah, the same man.
I feel like because we're all quite, I don't know, I feel like our personalities are quite similar in the sense of we need really someone to like be that chill to like level us out. So they are all very similar. Yeah.
Oh, it's so funny. And like me and my boyfriend, we often like say, or he often says to me, like, I can't even imagine what it'd be like if you were with someone who was like anxious. It just wouldn't work.
Yeah. we need opposites to us for sure.
Yeah, but I had the same, Beth. I would say to my boyfriend, you know, are you just not anxious? What do you mean you're not anxious? Like, are you sure? He's like, yeah, I'm fine.
Just to tell you like a quick mini story, my partner has never experienced anxiety before. He's never experienced stress, and I was always anxious. There was always something that I was worrying about. And he organised a holiday for, I think, my 21st birthday, and he'd booked the flights incorrectly. He'd booked the flights for one weekend and then the hotel for the next weekend, right? This is how unorganised he is. And he was like, oh my God, I've got this feeling in my chest and I don't know what it is. And I was like, honey, this is what anxiety feels like.
This is it.
He was like, I've never had it before and I don't want it again.
Bless him. Oh my gosh. I know everyone has had the same thing with, you know, being like, oh, I think this is anxiety. And it's like,
is it?
Yeah. So, you know, let's get the DSM out. Let's go through all the symptoms. No, I don't do that. Should we talk about what challenges we may have faced during our recovery?
Yeah.
So we're really going to go into the good, the bad and the ugly, but starting with the bad and the ugly, I guess.
For sure.
Shall I start?
Who's gonna go first? Yeah, Harriet, you go for it.
So I think when I was, again, because part one of my disordered eating, I feel like I was almost like forced to change. It just like kind of happened. I can't really recall what challenges I faced. So I'm mainly going to talk about my part two. So this was after I realized that, wow, I feel like I've been lied to by diet culture and I don't want to diet again. And as I said in the first episode, yes, it clicked for me that dieting was harming me. I didn't want to do it anymore, but it wasn't as simple as that's it. I had this realization and now I'm fine. Now I've got food freedom. Obviously it comes with challenges, which I'm going to share some of them. But I guess the main challenge was fighting that urge to want to lose weight. I'm just going to be like completely honest. I've losing weight. So I've decided to stop dieting, but that didn't mean that urge to lose weight and that want to lose weight just disappeared. And I really had to figure that out for myself. I really had to reflect on that and, you know, continue to ask myself, like, why do you want to lose weight? Is it because you really want to lose weight? Is it because society is telling you to lose weight? And I think it's really trying to it's trying to separate the want to lose weight from diet culture and the societal values that have been forced upon us. I said to myself, like, Harriet, if you're able to do that, if you can sit down and logically and emotionally separate those two things, then fine. But I never could. And so it was just this thought, these thoughts that were just going round and round in my head. And I also think there was a lot of guilt there as well for if I ever did have that thought that said, you know, I want to lose weight. I felt really guilty about it, especially, you know, when I was starting to professionally work in this industry. I felt a lot of guilt. I was like, I shouldn't be having those thoughts. And especially when logically I know that, you know, this is just going to make me feel helpless again. This is going to, you know, take me away from myself and it's going to harm me if I engage in that behavior again. I just felt really bad that I was having even the tiniest thought that said, oh, maybe you should lose weight, or maybe you can do it secretly. And I guess there was just a period of time where I just had to argue with myself or argue with that side of me for a bit. So that was, I guess, like one challenge. And then, of course, there's the challenge of your body changing. So my body did change because I stopped dieting and I stopped restricting. And I didn't refer to it as all in, but I guess it was all in terms of I just ate what I wanted and I didn't limit myself. And yeah, I had to, accept that my body was going to change, and it did change. And I guess this like kind of like went hand in hand with then sometimes having those thoughts of like, oh, you should lose weight or you should try and change your body again. How can you do both? How can you be anti-diet, be against diet culture and want to lose weight? Can you do both? Okay, like, getting the notepad out, trying to separate the two, obviously failing at that and just feeling like really confused. So I guess that's a challenge on its own. And I don't know, I wonder if you girls are planning to talk about that at all or had any thoughts on that in terms of accepting that your body may change.
Yeah, no, I think it's really important. It's really important to bring it up because I think, like you say, you can feel a real sense of guilt when you're still having those feelings. And for me, my journey was difficult because when I explained about my journey, weight loss was still involved. And I got to the point then when I wanted to remove myself from that, because how I recovered from food, I embarked on going with Weight Watchers, because at that point their message was being all inclusive of all foods, and I really wanted to learn how I could eat all foods again, but it come with weigh-ins. And I think that was what was really difficult for me, because where I've been caught in that cycle of going to those weigh-ins, even though I felt like, oh my god, like I'm really proud of myself because I'm again eating carbs, I'm having what I like, there was still an element of control there. But I really do feel like for me, and I'll be completely honest, I idolized this certain version or body shape that I wanted to attain. And it was quite like, I don't know, I felt like, and I feel like for a lot of people, everyone feels like, that's it, I've got to let that go. And that's really, really sad. And I think that's what I struggled with the most. Like, I'm letting go of that. I'm never going to get there. But the journey that it's gone through and how I've now detached myself from weight loss has happened really without me even knowing. And that version of who I wanted to be is just not important anymore.
I think that's a really good way of putting it. Yeah, I think it was just for me that constant reminder as well. It's like you think that you might want this. You think that you might, that losing weight and changing your body will fix all of your problems, but we know that it doesn't. We know that's not the answer. So it's like gently letting go of that person.
For me, after going through recovery and probably gaining a few pounds, I wouldn't know because I do not step on a scale, but probably I'm more confident in my skin. Like, I can take the clothes off and stand in front of a mirror and look at myself and be like, damn girl, like I couldn't do that before when I was like trying to lose weight. So I think when you have that little voice in your head being like, oh, maybe we should try this, I think it's so important to be like, okay, what does this actually mean? Does this mean you're like depriving yourselves of all the foods that you love? Does this mean that you're going to become more obsessed with how your body is looking and feeling? Is this going to be exhausting? Like, I have obviously, like talking to you guys here and like starting this podcast and stuff, I have never found a way of dieting that hasn't made me miserable or have. So I solely feel, for me personally, whenever I feel that outside pressure to lose weight, it is purely from what I am seeing on social media or what I'm reading in a magazine. I know for a fact it's never come in from like my inner self.
That's a really good point in terms of, if you are embarking on your recovery journey and then you start to have those thoughts that I want to lose weight, and you start to feel guilty for having those thoughts because it isn't conducive to recovery, I think it's important to remind yourself that that voice isn't coming from you. It's coming from all of these other external factors. And so it's not your voice. Maybe that takes away some of the shame or guilt from it. But yeah, so in terms of like my challenges, obviously learning to accept my body changing. One that I thought was, it's not funny, but when you stop dieting and you learn about diet culture, it almost feels like you've left the cult of dieting. And for me, it's suddenly like I started to hear how people were talking about dieting, and I just thought it just sounded really strange, because at this point I feel like I found enlightenment and I've left the cult. I feel like I know so much, and then you hear other people talking about dieting and calling foods good or bad, or being like, oh, have to restrict on Monday. And when you're in that position of deciding to recover, it just sounds bizarre hearing how other people talk. And I just remember feeling like a bit of an outsider. I was like, I always feel like I'm an alien now.
Yeah, it's like when you're at a party and everybody else is drunk and you're the sober one, and it's like I feel really like out of place. Like, yeah, I don't know what to do. Like, I feel out of place, and I think everyone is allowed to do what they want to do. But I think when you've really realised something that's good for you, it's difficult to hear those things and be in that situation with people that are talking about those things you used to talk about.
I do feel like I'm a little bit desensitized to it, if I'm being honest. Like, coming from more of the fitness community, I see people like cutting and bulking and like doing whatever every day, and I just feel like I just blank it out now. I'm just like, okay, you do you, but I know after, because I think recovery is also about having to like rediscover yourself. I think you're having to find this new version of yourself, create this new person. So I just feel quite like desensitized to it. When anyone like in my personal life mentions a diet and stuff, I'm just like, if you want me to like educate you a little bit further on, not being trapped in this anymore, I will do. But if you want to carry on, then whatever. I'm just not going to like engage in this conversation.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I feel the same in terms of like it never triggered me that other people were talking about diet. It just felt weird. And nothing you explained. I think that's exactly how I felt. It's like other people are drunk and I'm sober, and I'm just like, what is going on here? It's like, yeah, you do you drink, and I'm gonna stay here and have my clarity. I love that comparison. But yeah, I guess just to kind of wrap up my challenges, I call my recovery the period of like detanglement. I don't know if detanglement is a word, but now it is.
No, it is.
Sounds right. So it's now a word. But the period of detanglement was where I allowed myself and I gave myself permission to eat what I wanted to eat, move however I wanted to move. So for me, that meant I think I went to the gym like twice or three times in my recovery period, because I kept trying to go to the gym and convince myself that I enjoyed going to the gym, but I just never did, and it was always associated with changing my body. So I decided, okay, I'm just not going to go to the gym anymore. Yeah, so I guess like it was kind of really going all in and just really detangling myself from any activity that was associated to weight loss, because I wanted to completely just separate myself from that. I would say the challenges that come with that is just kind of what I've said before. It's is this coming from my core voice, or is this coming from this voice that's telling me to lose weight? And you really just have to like figure that out. But I was so committed, and I still am so committed, that even if I thought there's a little bit of that voice that is to do with losing weight, I just don't do that activity because I don't want to risk it. And so for me, yeah, that meant changing a lot of my lifestyle and just doing other things. But, I don't want people to feel scared and think, oh, I can never go to the gym again, or I can never try to eat healthy again, because that's not what I'm saying. But I do think there is this period where you have to separate those things for a minute, just so that when you do go back to exercising, it's because you want to exercise, or because it makes you feel good, or because it gives you energy, and not because there's a chance that it might change your body. Hope that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. That makes sense. It's like making sure that the reasons are truly meaningful to you, not because you're trying to change yourself and how you look from the outside, but because you want to improve your mental health, or, you're eating healthier, not because, again, you want to restrict and lose weight, but because you want to feel good. You should put everything to how it makes you feel, truly. I think.
Yeah, and it's about being honest with yourself.
At the end of the day, like, exercise should add to your life. Food should add to your life. Like, none of these things should be taking anything away from you. And if they are, then they need to be changed.
Absolutely. So yeah, that was my challenges. But Beth, do you want to tell us kind of what you faced in recovery?
So like I said before, I just felt like I had to like completely rediscover myself as a person. My sort of disordered eating and like diets and everything was my entire life and my entire personality. Like Gym Bunny was my personality. I will hold my hands up. So trying to learn a new way of eating, learn a new way of looking at my body, learning a new way of looking at exercise was essentially me having to completely redesign my life, redesign my personality, and like find out who this new version of me was going to be. So my recovery was very much, I decided to stop binging and literally never binged again. So this isn't the reality for a lot of people. I am so aware of this. Like, you know, if you can go from binging 4 times a week to 3, then that is progress. Like, you don't have to just say, I'm going to stop, and then it happens as easy as that. So I am quite lucky in that aspect. This is just how it happened for me. So initially I really put the focus on sort of like eating more in the week and like consuming like less processed foods, because a big issue of mine was I would never make proper meals. I was always eating snack bars or protein bars on the go, and ended up just feeling super hungry and super unfulfilled, super undernourished as well, and spiraling into a binge. And like my binge urges were crazy. I remember literally sobbing to my partner about how badly I just wanted to throw the towel in and just go back to like my binge restrict sort of pattern. And I think mentally at the start I was very obsessed with numbers still. I was very obsessed with things like calories and the scale, because I think even when you decide, right, I'm gonna take away all the calorie counting, in your head you still look at, I don't know, a snack bar and you know how many calories are in it. You look at an egg and you know how many calories are in it. So like having to unlearn those numbers and stop seeing food as numbers and like see it as fuel took me a while. And like my coach at the time was still getting me to step on the scale each week and measure myself and take progress pictures, which I did eventually have to say, look, this isn't helping my recovery. Big thumbs down, 0 out of 10. But eventually I was just like, you know what, I'm glad I got to a place that I was self-aware enough to be like, this is not benefiting me doing this each week, I need to stop this. And like I definitely had a preconceived notion and sort of like an expectation in my head that recovery was going to bring instant weight loss. I thought that giving up binging, I was surely gonna drop a stone, which obviously proves the poor mindset I had at the beginning of my recovery. And yes, I wanted to stop binging, but it was still all focused about my body and me sort of like praying that giving up binging was going to like drastically change my body. So obviously like still a negative mindset at the start. But I started my recovery in lockdown. So I think I got like a different experience to a lot of people because it was just such a different time. So I had the support of my wonderful partner and obviously like social media and my phone, but I was literally like cut off from the rest of like the physical world. And I sort of attribute isolation to how quickly I was able to like kickstart my recovery, because I didn't have the pressure of outside opinion. I didn't have the pressure of like social outings, so like possible triggers like going out for meals. I didn't have the option to do that anyway. So by the time we came out of lockdown, I'd been working on myself for like so many months and doing all this sort of like digging in the silence, because I just remember lockdown just being like a very still, quiet time. But because like we came out of lockdown, I was so excited to just experience being outside, being with people. I was so excited to spend time with my family and like spend time with like my loved ones. I wasn't focused on the food. So we'd go out for a meal, but I was just buzzing to see my parents and not caring what was on my plate as well. So I really think that benefited me, because like we always say to clients, like when they face social occasions, try and focus on that time with your family, focus on the experience, focus on making memories. And obviously that's easier said than done. But I think that when a lot of us went into lockdown, I'd sort of like personally realised that I'd taken all these experiences completely for granted. So it's as if like my excitement to go out and simply literally have a drink with my friends or go out for a Sunday dinner completely outweighed that fear and the focus on food in the first place. I got through those first few months and I'd really sort of like started to transform how I viewed food. There was no longer any good food. It was no longer bad food. It completely like got rid of my urges to binge as well. And in fact, like I remember like the thoughts of over consuming in that way again just made me feel so sick. I've been working on like my body image, and obviously like we had a long way to go. Like I'd worked on my food and like my relationship with exercise, but like my body image was like the last thing to sort of like get caught up. And I definitely feel like on reflection, that's when I began to take that sort of all-in approach that you mentioned, Harriet, which for me was like, oh my God, I've been deprived of all these things and all these experiences so long. I can sort of have whatever I want whenever I want without guilt. Obviously, whilst I was like binging, I was still going out for takeaways. I was still doing all these things, but they weren't enjoyable experiences. They were always riddled with organisation and stress and compensation. So I was just like, oh my God, I can go out and do all these things and nothing bad happens. Like I don't have to move my body anymore. I can just literally eat and go to sleep, and then that's it. And it's great. So I felt like I just had to like go and experience everything. So like I will hold my hands up and say like some days it literally resulted in like 3 takeaways in a day. Breakfast, lunch and dinner, because I felt so empowered and so free to consume whatever I wanted with full permission that I definitely like lost sight of like fueling my body efficiently. But that was like another lesson in itself for me. So like having a McDonald's breakfast and then a Subway for lunch and then a KFC for dinner was delicious. And obviously it was me exercising my food freedom, and I felt zero guilt. God, did I feel crap by the end of the day. Like it was horrible. My stomach was screaming at me.
And I always think as well, when you do go on holiday, you look around on the beach and you're like, no one gives a shit. The only reason we feel like people do is because we are really honing in on how we are feeling about ourselves, how much weight we have lost before the holiday, whether our abs are going to show in a picture. So we're deeming that everybody else is going to be looking at us thinking that they aren't. When you actually sit and you look on a beach and you see a family and, you know, them enjoying, they brought food to the beach and they're playing with their kids and jumping in the sea. And it's like, I remember just looking around and thinking, I'm not being able to experience that right now in this moment. Whereas like, yeah, just no one cares. Like, and you look at everyone and you're like, everyone's body is amazing. Everyone's got a different body shape. Everyone is different. So the experience can be so much better when you let yourself just take back the control that you want and, you know, how you want to live your life.
Absolutely. And I think what I hear a lot of people say is that, you know, I want to lose weight or like, you know, get shredded so I can look confident. And I think there's a difference between looking confident and feeling confident. And feeling confident has nothing to do with what your body looks like. And so there's a difference. And so when people say that to me, oh, but I want to look confident, I always question, but wouldn't you rather feel confident? Because there's a difference. So yeah, just interesting. Nat, tell us, what were your challenges?
The challenges in which I faced, you know, I know another episode we're going to talk about specifically what we did to break free from dieting, but the challenges in which I faced were, I really first of all had to work mentally on how I viewed myself, how I viewed food. And I'm very, very lucky because my brother is a therapist, so I feel like it was like a godsend that he, you know, because like Harriet, in the ways in which you help others to discover food freedom, to work on how you view food and your body, that wasn't around when did I do it? I was 24, so 6 years ago. Yeah, that wasn't around then. There was no, all therapists I felt was all very much, you know, it was blanket sort of diagnosis of how you feel and what we're going to do to help you. I didn't feel like there was anyone specifically out there to help me with, you know, food and body image issues. I found my therapist and she really, really helped me. And I always say that what I feel, and it might be different for other people, but I really realised that the way that I ate wasn't just, it was coming from something else. The way in which I was trying to control how I ate and what I looked like was coming from the fact that I felt like I'd lost control in other areas of my life. And that's what she really helped me to, things in which I didn't even know. So the challenge was facing those. And the challenge was also really discovering how much I didn't like myself. And that was I remember she asked me to write down things about myself. And everything that I put was something bad. I feel like I'm never going to be in a relationship. I feel like I'm never going to get, at the time I was in the dance industry, I feel like how I look, what I weigh isn't going to allow me to get a job. And I remember she took the paper, and I still have it in my drawer right next to me, all the things in which she wrote about me, because we got to know each other quite well then, all the things in which she changed. So she took the paper, she then put it side by side, and she wrote the things in which she felt were my values. That was, I think, the most challenging thing in changing my mentality, because I knew for me I had to do that before I tackled just the food. And yeah, then the challenge was like, okay, how do I eat? And again, I was really lucky. My best friend, she struggled severely with binge eating as well, and restriction, and I'd seen her through, I don't know how many years of this, but not knowing what it was. So I was always very much her support. And then I remember a point where she'd really worked on recovering from that. And I was like, I remember we'd been traveling basically, and she'd come home before me. And it was like 6 months in which she'd done this work, and we hadn't really been in contact. And then I came back home, and I was like, you know, we started talking again, and I was like, wow, like you've worked on this. And she is like my sister, like she's literally like my sister. So I felt like she really guided me in saying, Natalie, you need to eat more. Like, I remember telling her what I ate one time, and she was like, no. And that was the challenge I faced. You've got to eat more. Like, you have to eat more. And this thing of like resisting, like, but no, but that means I'm going to put on weight, but it's the only way. What you've been doing doesn't work. And it was facing that battle. And I say I really faced that battle for a really, really long time. I felt like the challenge was just not binging and feeling like I'd done really well. And then there'd be a moment where I just did. And I'd be like, where has this come from? I don't know why I'm doing that. I thought I was getting better. This must mean that I'm not. I've taken 10 steps back. I really struggled with other people's opinions. So like people not understanding what I was doing. And it got to the point as well, like friends, I really had to work hard on just tackling one food at a time. And felt like I couldn't tell that to friends, certain friends, when I was going out. And if they saw things that I was eating, and say if there was a big buffet of food, or they were like, come on, we're going to get pizza, that was so scary for me. But they just saw it as Natalie's eating healthy again. And I really struggled not to conform, because what I would do then then I would eat the pizza. I wasn't ready to eat the pizza, and then I would binge, and then I'd feel like shit. And it was like, I needed to listen to me. If I didn't want to eat that pizza, then I know I'm going to want to. I do know, but like, I have to do this in my own time. Challenges with Christmas. I remember like the first Christmas and being like, this is really going to go well. It didn't go well. And I'd set such a high bar and an expectation on it. It went better than it had, but it wasn't this like binge-free time that I expected it to be. And I think, Beth, that's why it's really important in what you said, that, you know, some people, it does work like that. It does work that it's like smoking. Some people, I quit smoking and I went cold turkey, and that worked for me. But for other people, it doesn't. They have to cut down. It's like anything that you're trying to recover from. And also as well, there's so many challenges that go on forever, but I found myself sometimes again falling back into restriction. So if life would get really busy and I was not eating as much, not through wanting to do it, but through that situation or through that time period, meaning that I couldn't fit in those meals, and then I'd look in the mirror and be like, oh, I feel like I've lost a little bit of weight, and really being like, no, like, you can't do this. And I really learned quickly. And people around me, like my brother, is so good at being like, in those times, sitting me down and being like, remember that you don't do this. Like, I just want to make sure that everything is okay. And my boyfriend now, like, he's really good at being like, come on, I know you're busy, but make sure that you have breakfast now. It's like, I know I'm always going to do it, but I think it's really important to have those people around you which are really supportive and can tell you the truth, you know, and not be scared to do it. Because the me before would probably get really defensive over that and be like, don't tell me what to do. Like, you know, when I was caught in that diet, culture. And yeah, I think the challenge was to open up to people, them to gain the understanding of what I'm doing so that their comments wouldn't affect me, you know. So if there's people in my life that are close enough that I feel like their comments are triggering me, then I will, in a really calm way, just be like, I would have been like, look, this is what I'm struggling with right now and what I'm trying to recover from. So I just want to let you know that, you know, some of those comments or behaviours are difficult for me right now. And people will always understand when they're super close to you. But yeah, there are some of my challenges that I face. There's loads, but I think it's really important people know that like this isn't like some linear journey in which it's like you rise to the top. Like if anyone can see my hand, I'm doing like a wave motion. It's like a roller coaster.
People think it's going to be, I'll start my recovery journey and that's it. I'll be like 100 days binge free. And it's like, no. And that's why I almost don't really encourage people. It's hard because I was about to say that I don't really encourage people to count the amount of days they've been binge free. I know that's really motivating for some people to be like, I've been 1 week, like X week binge free. I think do that, but just also know that if you have a wobble, it doesn't mean you've ruined any progress.
We decided to now speak upon what we gained so that we end it on a really positive note, because we've talked about the challenges. They are hard, but it's important to say also what you gained from these journeys. So the things in which I gained is realizing that all of those challenges were necessary. Like they are there to help, they were there to help me learn, to help me gain strength, and to help me to get to this place, because without those experiences and without learning, you're not going to be able to put them towards other challenges in which you may face. And then you'll be like, oh my God, like I actually conquered that, whereas before I wouldn't have. So they are necessary. And being in a relationship, you know, I wasn't for 6 years because I really didn't feel worthy, or I just didn't like myself. For me, and what's really important for me to be in a relationship, I have to like myself first of all. I have to do that work on me, because otherwise all I'm going into a relationship doing is letting someone else's opinion and their love for me make me feel good. I need to make myself feel good before I can be with anybody else. So that was something that I gained. And more enjoyment from life, 100%. Spontaneity, as you said, Beth, self-compassion, and actually liking who I am, regardless of my body. You know, I've really found like my confidence. Love for food again. I've forgotten what I'd like to eat. Like I actually didn't know what I like to eat in the end. So I love food. Realising my body is allowed to change. Like giving myself that, like, I don't know, just giving myself that hug and being like, my body is allowed to fluctuate. It's okay. I don't have to stay the same size throughout life. And also I've really found that in embarking on this journey and doing this, I've gained you too, because we wouldn't have met. And I feel like also it's created like a safe space for people to feel like they can open up to me and tell me like when they're struggling with things, which I know is so hard for people to do. I think it's really important that we talk about those things, and a true inner happiness. That's what I've found. But Beth, what have you gained?
I've gained sort of like an inner peace and like an inner calm. And I think like even when situations hit you and are supposed to be really stressful, I just have a much more optimistic, positive mindset. So I'm better able to like deal with like life's challenges. So I just feel like I'm so much more calmer. And like you said, I've literally like fallen completely back in love with food. Like I was always a foodie, and having to sort of decide, am I eating this because I just want to binge on it, or am I eating this because it tastes good? Like I found a new love for like taste. I feel like my taste buds have been like completely like had a reawakening of themselves, like a better quality of life, like I said before, because I just didn't have a good quality of life before. I wasn't like any of the time. I was constantly stressed about food, the next thing that I was going to have to compensate for. I've sort of fallen, not just back in love with food, but like exercise as well. I've had to fall back in love with my body. Like I've got so much confidence now just in my skin to like obviously like wear what I want, but just be able to like stand in front of the mirror and look at myself and be like, yeah, like you don't have to love yourself all the time, but all I ever wanted to do was be able to tolerate my body. And this is why like I love things like body neutrality. I was just like sick of hating myself when I looked in the mirror. So just to be able now to look at it and be like, okay, this is all right, was amazing. So that's something that I've gained. Like the freedom to be spontaneous. Not that I go out much anyway, but it's just lovely to be able to go out for a coffee and a brownie and it just be an enjoyable experience. It's nice to be able to go out for a spontaneous meal without any sort of planning, and it's fun. And what like comes with that is a happier relationship with my partner, not just because we can go out and like loads of stuff, but now he can like cook my dinner for me, and it doesn't matter how much oil he puts in the pan or whether he weighs out the rice or not. Like things that I used to, you know, are raging arguments and me in tears is now just like nothing. So like we've just got like a much better relationship because I'm no longer taking out my disordered eating on him. But yeah, I'm just like a way happier person, but like a way nicer person to be around as well.
I think in terms of what I've gained is really one of the biggest things is this new purpose and mission. I've never felt so passionate about anything in my life and just feel that I know my place. I know what I want to do. I know that I want to help people with this, and I know that I want to learn as much as possible and really be at the top of my game when it comes to work in this field, and that passion just feels really good. But in terms of like personal gains, yeah, it's similar to what you girls said. It's really learning to view yourself through this compassionate lens and like get back on the same team of your body. You know, it's like a new sense of self-care as well. It's like I actually want to take care of myself because I want to feel better, not because I want to look better, because there's a difference. And I think I engaged in a lot of self-care activities before with the goal of like changing how I looked because I hated how I looked. Now it's like, no, I want to engage in self-care activities because I want to feel better, and it's a difference. And I just feel so connected with myself. I feel like I know who I am and who I want to be. And yeah, it's just true self-acceptance and freedom. And of course, meeting you two, you know, going to be in my life forever. And that's such a huge gain. I'm really grateful for that. And of course, this podcast, and yeah, so much comes out of recovery. Like things that you won't expect will come out of it. That happens for most people. You gain so much more than you ever think that you will. And it's so magical. It's a magical experience.
It is. And I was thinking as you were saying that journey like evolves so much. Like there's even things that I do now, like things happen now, like, and I'm 6 years into the point of where I wanted to recover, and like even like I would say last month I do something that I thought, oh my god, like without knowingly I wouldn't have done that before. Or it evolves and it changes without you even knowing, but it's the best journey to take.
Yeah, it's like I'll tell you a very, 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 very quick story. But I went to the zoo on Saturday, and it was a really hot. I was in Singapore, and it was really hot. And we went to this zoo, and I was just so tired. I felt like I had no energy because we were walking around all day. I remember I said to my boyfriend, I said, okay, I think I want to work on my fitness levels because I want to have more energy, because I want to enjoy days like this more. And it clicked with me that I've just said that I want to work on my fitness levels for a reason that isn't to do with losing weight. And honestly, I could have cried in that moment because I was like, oh my God, like, you know, I actually want to do something for me. And I never thought that that would be something that I'd get so excited about, but it just was. And like, it just felt so right. And I felt so content. And I really felt like I was connected with myself, and I wanted to take care of myself, and I tuned into myself, and it felt really good in that moment. But yeah, guys, that's the good, bad, and ugly of recovery. But let us tell you that the good definitely outweighs the bad and the ugly, but doesn't mean that, You know, you're allowed to feel frustrated at the bad and the ugly throughout your recovery journey. You're allowed to ask for help. You're allowed to cry. You're allowed to feel your feelings, but just know that the good is there. The light is at the end of the tunnel.
And like we said, probably next episode we're going to branch off of this and we're going to keep going, because it feels like that's sort of the theme. But yeah, we hope you all really enjoyed this episode as much as we love talking about it.
Yes, and remember to check the show notes, because there's all our links in there. So if you're interested in working with us, as we are coaches and therapists, then all that information is there. So feel free to ask us any questions about that, and follow us on Instagram at Rewrite the Rules Pod. But other than that, we'll see you next week.
Yes, see you next week. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for tuning in. If you love this episode, make sure you subscribe to us so you don't miss out. And if you really love this episode, we would also love it if you could leave us a review wherever you are listening to this podcast.
Also, if you think any of your girl or guy friends would enjoy this podcast, make sure you share it with them so we can spread the love.
And don't forget to connect with us on Instagram over at Rewrite the Rules Pod. If there's anything that you would love for us to talk about, just send us a little DM and we'll add it to our list. See you next time.
Bye.